The problem with the PH2 connectors that come on a lot of these Whoop style quads, all the ones I've seen anyway, is that the pins are not solid. They are a bent folded piece of sheet metal. You can see those black lines down in the middle of the pins. It's actually a U shape, and that causes a high resistance condition inside the connector, which causes a lot of sag, especially on 2S quads, especially on this 2S quad. So typically the way to fix this is to take this connector off and put a connector with solid pins on and solder it on. I've come up with a solution that lets you fix this connector with just a soldering iron. So what you want to do, first step is make sure you pay attention to the orientation, which wire is going into which side of the connector, because you're going to be pulling the pins out, and when you put them back in, if you put them back in the wrong way, you're going to blow something up. So what we want to do is we want to take these pins, these plastic pins here, and bend them up. Don't bend them too far, because if you do, they'll break off. But if you bend it up, then you should be able to take the pin, the wire with its pin on the end, and actually pull it out of the connector. So we're going to do that on both sides. This one's going to be a little bit more challenging than some of the other quads because the wires on it are very short, but we should still be able to do this. Okay, so we got both pins out now. Now, let's see if we can see a little bit better the problem. Okay, so see, these are crimped pins, and this is just one piece of sheet metal here that is folded over in the middle. So what we want to do is we want to take our soldering iron and we want to fill that little fold. So I'm going to get set up and try to zoom in here. Too close. Come on. Focus. So we want to take our soldering iron and we want to fill in the gap. So I'm going to take one pin here. I'm going to try and keep the quad out of the way, so if I drip solder, I won't drip it on the quad. And so we can get this to focus. Good, good. So we're going to take the soldering iron, and I've got a fine point on mine. You're going to need one, and some fine solder. And what I want to do is I want to take the soldering iron and I want to stick it in the little gap right here. Hold it there and then wick some solder into there, and what's going to happen is capillary action is going to draw that solder down to the bottom of the pin, which it just did. So you can see now, maybe if it'll focus, sorry, there you go. You can see now that that pin is no longer a bent piece of sheet metal, it is a solid pin. So as opposed to that one, which is just a bent piece of sheet metal. It's kind of hard to see. Everything's very shiny and this is all very small, but this has been filled in by capillary action from the soldering iron. So I'm going to do this one as well, and then we're going to throw a 2S lipo in this thing and see if we still get the same horrible sag we were getting before. Now with this, I still expect to get a decent amount of sag simply because the battery that came with this quad is garbage. So I'm not expecting miracles with this, but it will help. So same thing, I'm going to take the tip of the iron and stick it in this little well right here, and then I'm going to watch the pin and I'm going to watch it fill up with solder, and there it goes. It's full down. So now both these pins have essentially been made into solid pins from the original bent sheet metal. You want to be careful how much solder you put in, because if you put a ton of extra solder in, it can wick out onto this other side and make it more difficult to put into the connector. But so far I've done a few of these and I haven't had a single problem getting them into the connector. So anyway, so we want to make sure we check our orientation again. I've actually got a spare connector here, which is going to help me out. So anyway, with the wires facing me, with the notch up, I want to put the red wire in on the right. And we want to make sure that these little tabs are facing the little tabs that you bent previously. And you want to bend those tabs down a little bit. So like I said, sorry about all the out of focus. I'm trying my best here. And we just push these pins back in. And push them all the way in until you lock them back up against their little locking tabs that you were manipulating earlier. Could be a little fiddly. Alright, I'm going to do this off camera because I can't really see what I'm doing, but what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and put that 2S lipo on here and see how the sag is. Alright, so we're going to take off. This is the stock 2S battery for the Tiny Hawk S. Man, look at that jello. Alright, so you can see already that the voltage sag is not really very bad. yeah, I'm sure you've seen other videos showing this on 2S, and it'll show low battery warnings pretty much constantly throughout the flight. I go full throttle here a few times and I don't have that problem. So this shows that using the solder trick on the bent sheet metal pins does work. Does it work as well as the stock solid pins do that you solder onto? I'm not sure, but it does seem to help. So I still wouldn't recommend flying 2S on the Tiny Hawk S because the motors came back screaming hot and the quad just doesn't seem to like it. So anyway, I hope you guys find this helpful, and I will talk to you later.